Welcome to the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show.
Cup of Joe Wrestling Show
with Joey Harris. A podcast for the wrestling fan on the go. So take your favorite beverage of choice and join Joey as he takes a look at some of the biggest shows on the WWE Network.
Welcome, everyone, to the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show. I am your host, Joey Harris, and we are broadcasting from makeshift studios in the shadow of South Central Virginia. You can follow the show on Twitter and Blue Sky at Cup of Joe Pod. Email the show at cupofjoewrestlingshow@gmail.com. If you would like to support the show, you can at paypal.me/cupofjoepod. I am on Cash App and Venmo at The Joey Harris. And, of course, patreon.com/babykangaroomedia. For bonus episodes of the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show, the Joey Harris Super Show, the Green Room, Book Club Baristas, and so much more, just $5 a month for hours of extra content. And folks, several years ago, I made a YouTube video that said, in a world of 6 o'clock, be 6:05, be different. And today I am honored to have the man who is Mr. 605, Reggie Harp, with me. Welcome, Reggie.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. We were just talking, folks. We've been talking about old school wrestling and different stuff for about 10 minutes before we came on. But Reggie, you told me before we started that you don't follow the current product, which is perfectly fine. I know a lot of people that did that. I had Steve Gennarelli of the Stick to Wrestling podcast on about a month ago. And we were talking about the fact that when the last Nitro went off the air, even though it may not be what people were used to, you had a lot of fans that were fans from the Mid-Atlantic and all of that who just didn't watch wrestling again because no matter how different it became, it was no longer their wrestling. So how did you become a wrestling fan?
Well, I became a wrestling fan. My dad was a big wrestling fan, and my grandmother was a wrestling fan. And like I said, at an early age, I remember my dad sitting in front of the television watching wrestling. You know, back in the day, if your dad's watching something, it ain't like you say, "Hey, I want to watch something else." You watch whatever your dad's watching. But I grew up in a little small town in South Carolina. It's called Saluda, right? So Saluda is right on the borderline where it's in the area where they call it. It's in that CSRA Augusta area. Okay. Central Savannah or something like right, but in the Augusta area. So we didn't have cable television. So I grew up on Georgia Championship Wrestling. I grew up Gordon Soley was the announcer, and it was Tony Atlas, Tommy Rich, Mr. Wrestling #2, the Battle of Atlanta, Buzz Sawyer and Tommy Rich. You know, like I said, I've seen a lot of great wrestling with Georgia Championship Wrestling, and like I said. And a lot of people don't realize he gets some slack. But I remember when Tommy Rich ruled 605, he came on Tommy Rich was the hottest thing in professional wrestling. And, you know, I don't know if you remember, he was NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And at the age of 21 years old, at the time, the youngest NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He hadn't held a belt for 4 days, but still, he called himself World Champion. But like I said, that's how it started out. Just with Georgia Championship Wrestling. And then we progressed. We got cable and this beautiful thing called Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. I'm like, oh, so what is this? What, you know, it's there's another territory because, you know, back then, if you didn't get wrestling magazines, because that's what we did. That's how we found out stuff, you know, long before the internet. You got a wrestling magazine and you saw other territories. But when I saw Mid-Atlantic, I'm like, whoa, this is almost because I thought Georgia was the best, but Mid-Atlantic was just like a different breed. And like I said, I love Georgia, but Mid-Atlantic just took it to a different level. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I was stuck when I started watching Mid-Atlantic, it was like the cream of the crop. I watched the WWF, you know, as a kid, but I used to call that the cartoon wrestling. I watched it because I like wrestling, but I call it the cartoon wrestling.
Oh, no, I can understand that because I didn't become a fan until I was 13, 1991. I had watched it before that, but I was telling Steve Gennarelli when I was watching that, I was aware of people like Hulk Hogan and the Junkyard Dog because of the cartoons and everything that they were on.
Right.
And then I become a fan, and it's 1991. You've got WCW, but my fan in me came awake, and at that point I'm like you, I got to get everything. I'm trying to get as much wrestling as I can, magazines, and I'm just scouring the magazines, looking at results and trying to find out the history of everything. And there's just something different, like you said, there's something different about that Mid-Atlantic promotion. I'm jealous that you got to see Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Yeah. But Joey, you say you became a fan in 91, but by that time you say you was 13.
Yeah.
So if you'd have started, maybe because I started watching wrestling when I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I actually remember it. So if you'd have started, you'd have caught a little bit of the territory, because by the time you start watching, the territory was gone. But if you start, if you was about 7, about 86 and 80, Mid-Atlantic, and you still had some territory wrestlers, the UWF, Memphis, all that stuff was still going on. And like I said, by the time you start watching, you just barely missed it. It had just been something else that you can actually I lived through it. I remember watching it every week. I remember we did have VCRs, but we didn't record wrestling. I wasn't a tape trader or anything like that, right? But like I said, if I missed 6:05 on Saturday night, I'm like, man, I gotta wait for next week to figure out if something good happened last week,
Right. And going back now and looking at when I got to college, I was like, I wasn't trading tapes. I was just buying tapes because I had no tapes to trade. I mean, how that is. But I'm getting everything, and I'm getting real into like Mid-South and UWF, and it's all breaking down. You know how they did it at the end of the episode. Jim Ross is screaming, and then we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
Exactly. Man, if I had been in there, I'd have been glued to that TV set the next week.
Yeah. But the thing is, and I guess some aspects of it still exist now, because I see maybe with Triple H taking over, I see some of the storylines are lasting a little bit longer than a commercial break. Right. But back then, the guys, whether it was Dusty Rhodes or Ole Anderson, and Ole Anderson don't get enough credit. He gets a lot of credit for the character he was outside the ring. It's real. But Ole Anderson, the wrestling promoter, he was a brilliant mind. He did a lot of great things. He booked a lot of great matches, and he booked a lot of great stories. And he could tell a story. And that's what I liked about old school wrestling. They set you up, and and then it might be 2 months later, you had to remember something that happened 2 months ago that actually they waited. It's almost like, wow, it's almost like watching the younger wrestlers. It's like, this is some good stuff,
Oh yeah. I used to stay with my next door neighbor growing up, and I always say she and her husband, they were like grandparents to me and my two sisters. They treated us just like we were their own grandchildren. And they both get in there actually, because by the time I was little, he had retired, and they watched their Young and the Restless and their stories. And wrestling is the same way. You talk about that when Ole turns on Dusty in the cage. How long did it take them to set that up? A couple of years, maybe?
Well, I don't know about a couple of years, but it was some months, because you got to realize back then Dusty still if this was before Dusty became the booker of Mid-Atlantic. So I think Dusty became the booker of Mid-Atlantic like 83. Yeah, I think Ole when Ole turned on him, and I think it was the Omni. This might have been like 81 or 82. Right. It was before that. And my thing was, I remember watching it, and it's almost like it wasn't no 2 years, but it could have been easily 6 months, because because Ole was always a bad guy, and he would jump on the good side, but at that point, Ole's like, okay, I'm with you, Dusty. I'm here. And it's almost like, and everybody's like, oh, we want to bleed you, Ole, okay. And then all of a sudden, and the thing is, we saw it on the wrestling, like the show after it happened. You know what I'm saying? They show you how Gordon Solie, what I loved about him, he was like the Howard Cosell of sports. Sure. He was so believable, and he made you like break it down, like why this is real. Let's go back. They would go back and show you. Let's show you how it got here and where we at right now. It's almost like, that's why I used to love it.
Right. Yeah. No, I fully get that. And going back and looking at those things, that's why I do like stuff like YouTube now. You go
Right.
back and you look at that, and they made, because you get the average person out on the street, they're like, oh, you like that old fake stuff and all that.
Yeah.
But they treated it like he treated it, it was real, and
It was
like
real.
and explained, like he talked about, if you go back and you look at the first Starcade, he talks about during a football game, actual contact, not waiting, all that is about 8 minutes. So he goes, and if you imagine they're going at 30 minutes, that's the equivalent of almost 5 or 6 ball games. And I'm like, that makes sense to me.
It makes sense.
He just broke it down in a way that you could understand it.
It's almost like you see Rock and Roll Express. Nobody could ever get pinned with a double drop kick now, right?
Right.
Gordon Solo described it. He was like, imagine Robert Gibson is 220 pounds. Ricky Morton is 240 pounds. Imagine 500 or 480 some pounds hitting you all at one time and look, hitting you in the chest and knocking your wind out. I was like, okay, I get that. I get it.
Right. I told someone, I look at it like this today. What I don't like, the main thing I don't like about wrestling is that if I go to a wrestling show or I'm watching a wrestling show, I will suspend disbelief, but I don't want to be insulted. And a lot of times they are insulting me with everything that they're doing. So
right. Is it you're insulted by the actual moves itself, or the false finishes, or the what are you actually insulted by?
I tell you, Reggie, the thing that gets me the most is that when it falls outside, especially if it's a multi-man match, and 5 people wait to catch one guy going up and land on them. And I've seen it a couple of times. I can't remember the second one, but there was one, I want to say, but when I was going back and I was checking out different old school things, I think it was Continental Wrestling, and it was one of the Armstrongs. He's sitting outside and they hadn't even started yet. And the wrestler goes to dive onto him and he sees it coming and just steps out of the way. I'm like, because that's what you would really do.
That's what you would really do.
That's what you would really do if that happened.
But, and even now, you didn't realize, like I said, I would have never thought that part of the match was planned. They probably was like, okay, when you go up there, I'm going to act like I'm going to move. Because, back then I thought, oh man, all this, I didn't know wrestling was, I didn't know the match, they planned it in advance, or even if they worked in the ring, they knew what they was going to do before it happened. And that's why I say I wasn't a smart fan. I was not. I could tell some aspects of the business wasn't real. Sure. But I was like, oh man, you can't tell me that that's not real. You can't tell me that, that this person is not what's the guy that used to have the club, Baron? You can't tell me Baron von Raschke is not a real German or something like that. You can't tell me that. You couldn't tell me that.
Yeah, no, I fully get it, but I don't know if you have seen any of him. I tell you who impresses me big time now, and that's Braun Breaker, Rick Steiner's son.
Yeah, I know him, but I haven't watched him wrestle.
He picked up the best of both of his dad and his uncle, and about I guess it was around the beginning of the year, he comes around and spears this guy outside the ring, and the guy, you can see he turns around and he's so quick. He got him, but you can tell that from the look in this guy's eyes. Hey, if I hadn't had time, I would have moved out of the way. Right. And I don't mind so much if I'm thrown, let's say Reggie and Joey are wrestling and you throw Joey out. If I turn around towards the ring and you dive on me there, that's believable. I didn't have time. It's that standing around and waiting. It seems like forever. I'm like, at this point, if you jump, I'm not going to catch you. You're just going to hit the ground. Yeah, that's what. I don't want my, don't insult my intelligence.
Right? I get it. And when you said that, I thought you meant like some of the moves. It's almost like, back. I think when you're at home watching it, it looks more believable. When you're in the ring sometimes, or at the arena, it's almost, especially if you're close up. If you're close to ringside, it's almost like, man, you could have made that punch a little bit better than that.
Oh
you
yeah, yeah.
You know, at television, you can easily, you know, it's all illusion. You know what I'm saying? But
Sure.
yeah, but that's the only thing I like. Especially, I don't do a lot of indie shows, but when I do go, like I go to conventions, most of the time my show is always involved. And
Right.
nothing against the women wrestler or the ladies, but you can tell the ladies who actually put the work in and are getting better, or you can tell the ones that just started. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't watch this. This is, you know, it's almost like you know, they're doing a chop and they're hitting nothing but air. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? It's like
right.
I can't do it. I can't do it.
I can understand that. I thought, and you were talking about some of the different things you do at conventions before we started recording.
Mm-hmm.
You take somebody like a Medusa or like a Bull
I
Nakano,
know.
and they were, or even though I didn't see a lot of her wrestling, I saw a lot of her when she was managing Sherry Martel.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, just hit me just like I'm a man and all that,
Exactly.
and lay it in. Yeah.
And lay it in. Exactly. Because if you talk to hear Ric Flair interviews, you'll say when Wahoo hit him with that chop, it was a real chop. He wasn't, you know, he's like when Bruiser Brody hit you, it was a real hit. Them guys didn't like, hey, I'm just gonna stump my foot. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I went to my first wrestling show in 1993. It was an independent show. And the two biggest names on there at the time were Wahoo McDaniel and Greg Valentine. They fought each other.
Right.
Fought to a double count out, Reggie. They fell out right in front of me, and they chopped each other. I saw it, and I'm like, it was hurting me. I was 15 at the time. It was hurting me watching them because they laid it in, and I'm sure they wanted it like that.
So, and I know you supposed to be asking all the questions, but I got a question for you. So, you say you start watching wrestling in 1991, and that was your first show. What was the big arena back then? Because you know, kind of WCW would kind of rule stuff, and you know, WWF. So, did any of those come around? And so, what was the big arena that they would come to?
Neither one of them really came close to me. I'm originally from around northern North Carolina. Like if you know where Raleigh is, I'm about an hour north of Raleigh.
Okay.
Is where I grew up, right on the Virginia border.
Okay.
And they didn't in the 70s and early 80s. That was a Jim Crockett promotion. They'd probably come about once a month to around the area where I was from. Because after I got into wrestling, I had all my uncles and my cousins say, "Oh yeah, we remember the wrestlers when they would come up here," and I'm like, "I wish they'd come now."
Right.
But so this was like a local independent. I think they called themselves All Star Wrestling. They came to the high school, and all
I got you. Okay.
So they had Greg Valentine, and Medusa was actually on there. They were dating at the time. It was right before she went to the WWF. Right before she went as Alundra Blaze. And the main event was actually a battle royal, but the match before that was fantastic. Bobby Fulton versus Rob Van Dam. Rob Van Dam, very early in his career and all of that, and he wowed people.
Did he call himself Robbie, or was he Robbie V back then?
He had just stopped being Robbie V. He had just come off of WCW television. And had gone to Rob Van Dam. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And you could tell then that this guy has got it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you go to all these conventions and stuff. Right. I know you have some good stories of meeting wrestlers. So let me hear some of them.
Well, it's like this, right? And some of them are good, some of them not. Just like we talked about certain people, just like Lex Luger. If I go Lex Luger knows who I am. Right. Baby Doll knows who I am. I'm trying to think. Magnum TA knows who I am. It's certain wrestlers that I've seen over. If I go to Arn Anderson, I've seen him like 100 times, and every time I meet him, I'm meeting him for the first time. If that makes sense, because he doesn't know me from anybody else. And I was I met Ricky Steamboat a bunch of times, but he doesn't know me. I just met Ricky Steamboat's son maybe a couple weeks ago. He was at a little show here in Columbia, a little card show. And and he had a pair of Ricky Steamboat's boots from WrestleMania 3. He had them on display, right? But he was telling me that, his dad had met so many people, right? And I was like, I don't get that. I was saying, I understand, because like I said, if you meet all these people at conventions, for me to stand out, I would have had to do something that he would actually remember. And I don't do that, because if I'm at a convention, if I'm at WrestleCade, or if I'm at, when I go to the gathering in Charlotte, if when I go up, I'm treating it like I shake their hand, I take my picture, I get something signed, nice to meet you, and I move on. I'm not, some people get it and they want to turn it into like, it's like 300 people in line and you want that one-on-one. You want to be like, oh, well, tell me a story about, and it's like, it's not the time and place.
No.
If you want to do that, you got to pay extra or let them go to QA or something like that. But this is not the time. Like I said, when I do that, I just try to be in and out. And like you said, sometimes I develop a relationship with some of the wrestlers. Sometimes I don't. I've been telling people, I've been had this story since I was a senior in high school, right? I met this guy. He played on the basketball team. Where I came from, it was a high school and it was a little private school called King Academy. And they had this big guy. He was 7'2" center. And he was like, back then, the little TV news station, they call it the Pepsi Player of the Week, right? And this guy was the Pepsi Player of the Week, excuse me, for the basketball team, right? And I'm in my local grocery store, and I look over, and I look up, and the guy is in the next aisle, but I can actually see him. Who can see in the next aisle? But I actually saw the guy, right? And then I walked around. I was like, oh, that's the guy from King Academy, the basketball player, right? No big deal, right? That year was 1989, 1990. Fast forward 1993, right? I went to the University of South Carolina, so it was a guy named Mike Mooneyham write these articles, and they'd be in the paper. They'd be in the paper every week. And Mike Mooneyham, he smarted me up on the game. He started telling the wrestlers real names and everything, right? I'm like, oh man, this is some good stuff. But it was this article about this guy who just started in WCW, and he calls himself the Giant. And he's like, it's the Giant. If you remember him, he's a local favorite. He went to King Academy, and his name was Paul White. Wow. And I was like, so that guy I saw in the grocery store in high school would later on become Paul White, the Giant. And I was like, I've been telling this story for years, right? So I've seen Paul White all around, and I just saw him at a convention. I think it was in Vegas. I saw him, and he was at the table by himself. So I was like, hey, I'm about to go tell Paul White, a.k.a. Big Show, I'm about to tell him my story. I've been holding this for 30 years. I went up to him, and I was like, hey, man, I'm from a little small town, Saluda. I was like, you played basketball at King Academy. And I told him the story about how I saw him in the grocery store. I was like, I couldn't believe it was you. And he said, yep, good times, buddy. Nice to meet you. And he walked off. So I was like, I get it. But he wasn't mean, but he really didn't care. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, I get it.
So, go ahead.
No, I went to college in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Okay.
And it was the late 90s, and that's when NWO and all that was going. And they were coming to Fayetteville just for a little house show. And I stopped at McDonald's to get something to eat before the show. And I ordered, and it was waiting on my food. I had paid, was waiting on my food. I was just standing there. And all of a sudden, I see like a shadow fall like over me. And I looked, and he was standing right next to me. He was the Giant then. Right. That is the tallest guy I've ever been that close to. It felt like I only came up to his waist.
Right. And I think he was probably taller back then. I think over time he done got a little bit shorter. Right?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. He was riding in a car with Lex Luger, and Luger was out in the car. He was driving. I guess Paul White had gone in to get food for both of them just to get something. Right. But yeah, he was just the tallest guy. I said I have not really had any negative experiences, because you have to know, like you said, if there are like 300 people in line, hey, nice to see you, or always been a big fan, thank you very much. Get your picture and go.
Go. Yep.
Yeah. I thankfully have hit like Jim Ross and David Crockett when there was nobody in line. So I was able to ask them a couple of questions and get some responses and stuff. But not everybody is like that, as you know, going to all these conventions.
Yeah, but the thing is, most of them are not. Just like I go to this big convention in Charlotte. When I told you, it's called a gathering, and
Right.
a lot of the wrestlers we hang out in the lobby area, and by day you're paying these guys to take pictures. If you hang around the lobby at night, guess what? A lot of stuff they hanging out with you. Hey man, let's get a picture. Let's get a picture. A lot of stuff comes free at night. And then, like I said, but these guys, what you don't realize, some of them, they're just regular people too.
Sure.
And like I said, they tell you about the business, and a lot of times, I'll admit, I'm a mark. When I see a wrestling fan, or not a wrestling fan, but a person that's been in the business, I ask them about the business. Sometimes they don't want to talk about it, right? But
right.
That's what it is. I'll give you another quick story. The promoter that runs the gathering, when I was in New Jersey, he had what's the lady that was in ECW? Dawn Marie.
Yeah.
Dawn Marie was in the room with him signing autographs, right? Pictures. And I walked in, and Dawn Marie, she walks up to me and introduces herself like I don't know who you are. You know what I'm saying? Right. And then for the next 2 hours, we're sitting there talking about wrestling, right? And I'm like, I can't believe I'm up here in a hotel room talking to Dawn Marie, about how she started, about ECW, WWF, and then I'm just talking to her. And I was like, so the next day I see you at the convention, I want you to come up and talk to me. And she actually did, right? But after that night, after it was over, the promoter, he was like, so you're such a mark. She doesn't want to talk about wrestling. You could have been talking about anything else. He's like, that's why I don't talk about wrestling. I talk about regular stuff. And I was like, yeah, but I was like, I'm just not there yet. You know what I'm saying? I'm just not there yet. But he hangs around more, he hangs around the talent all the time. I hang around them, but I'm not hanging with them. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
so
right.
It's totally different. It's totally different.
Oh, no, I fully get that. Like when I talked to David Crockett, I had two questions I always wanted to know. And I'm like, if anybody would know, it'd be David Crockett. Number one, it was like, so you all had all those Starcades at Thanksgiving. Did you all had like a spread in the back for people? And he's like, he goes, it wasn't a great, but we did have something back there for people just to eat. And I said, when you had it in two locations, who got to choose what match went into which location? He said it was his brother Jimmy. And he goes, I'm out in the truck trying to patch both locations together on satellite. I'm talking to both locations. And he said, he goes, you think it was hectic, but it was perfect for him. He said, because he has ADHD, and it was perfect for him. He liked doing all that.
Right. But that was really, broadcasting. I don't know if you remember broadcasting two different locations at the same time. That was almost like state of the art back in early 80s. And nobody had almost like did something at two locations, because I'm trying to think. Starcade 83 was one but was it 84, 85? Was it 84? Was it two locations?
84 was still just in Greensboro. 85 and 86 were from Greensboro and Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah. And then 87, they just went to Chicago.
And nobody figured that out. The night of Scott, nobody, it's almost like the people in Greensboro are still upset. Like, why did you do it like that? It's like we've been there to support you. You're gonna do it, and they said the attendance was bad because nobody understood it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like they supported them all those years, and then the event itself, you're in the Road Warriors, what's supposed to be their hometown, they don't even go over. So I don't understand it, but that's all right.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd have done it something different if they had it to do over.
But you asked, it was about, I guess it was the same thing. It was 87. It was a Q&A with Jim Crockett. David Crockett about, I think I asked him about 3 years ago or 4 years ago. I can't remember. But I asked him a question. That year, Ron Garvin became world heavyweight champion. I don't know if you read about this or no. Yeah. Ron Garvin became world heavyweight champion. And Starcade was in November. Ron Garvin won the belt, I'm going to say, September, October. He won the belt, and he couldn't defend it against anybody.
No defenses,
no defenses. And I was like, do you think that was kind of smart? I was like, do you think you've been better off for 3 months to let Ron Garvin go against the top contenders that you had, and just slow look? You built this little man up, and slowly he's just taking everybody out. He deserves to be world champion because he was going to drop the belt back to Flair anyway. But you're going to make it seem like you give him no title defenses. I was like, what did that do to Ron Garvin's legacy as NWA World Champion? Who did you go against? Who did you beat? Who did you
Right.
Nobody. And he told me, he was like, yeah. He's like, you're probably right. He's like, if we go back, we probably would make some things different. But he's like, we made decisions what we thought, and we went with them. I like that's your answer. I can respect that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I think originally, if things had gone the way they wanted it to go, I think it would have been Flair and Magnum at that 87.
Exactly. Yep. Because and Magnum was going to win the world title.
Magnum was going to win the world title. Yep.
So I'm asking you this question: do you think if Magnum wouldn't have had the car accident, and if he'd have became an NWA world champ, do you think Magnum would have transcended and still been a big star? Because by the time you start watching it in '91, that gimmick, the whole that persona he had, the boss gimmick, I don't think it would have translated. What do you think?
I think they would have done it. Dusty loved Magnum.
Right.
I think Dusty would have done everything he could to push Magnum. I think he would have given it the best shot. Like you, I don't know. Yeah. I just don't know like that because things were changing. Now the biggest beneficiaries, unfortunately, from the way that was Sting and Luger coming in, because that kind of fills that space like right after Dusty. My only thing was I was hoping that eventually they wouldn't have done what I think they were going to do if Magnum had not had the accident, was eventually turn him against Dusty, which would have been horrible, I think. But
yeah, and maybe it could have, because Magnum did have that. He had that bad boy persona already. I don't know if how far you watched it, but when Magnum TA went against Nikita. And, Nikita's talking about his mom and calling him a mama's boy. And they had this altercation with Bob Geigel, was the president of the National Wrestling Alliance.
Yep.
And, he came up there and he's like, Magnum TA, this is a reprimand. We're not going to do anything, but right now this is a reprimand and you're on warning. And then Magnum's like, that was my mom. What do you think? This is your warning. And he just punched him.
Right.
And after he punched him, They held up the U.S. title, and at that point, we got the best out of 7, which was, again, a great storyline.
Yes.
Great storyline. You know what? Nikita wins the first 3. Magnum battles back. It's almost like I said, perfect writing back then. I was rooting for Magnum to get the belt back, but like I said, Nikita, it was meant for him to be the U.S. champion, from the Kremlin,
Right. And just thinking about it right now, I still get chills. Going back and looking at it after Magnum's accident, when they go out there and Dusty and Nikita come out, the crowd loses it when they see them.
Right. The superpowers.
The superpowers. Yeah.
That was the name. Exactly. But like I said, to me, there have been certain times in wrestling when I call them hotbeds of wrestling. To me, if you go back to that 85, 86, or into 87, wrestling was on. Like when I woke up at 8 o'clock, wrestling was on from 8 o'clock until like 2 o'clock. You were getting, like you said, I was getting UWF, I was getting NWA, I was getting some Mid-South, I was getting well, not Mid-South, but I think something from Tennessee. I was getting the I don't know if you remember, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling.
Oh, Glow, yeah.
It was everything came on. It was the best time. And then if you go 10 years from that, when Nitro started back in '96, and you had the Monday Night Wars, it was almost like back then wrestling was on top of the world. It was like everything, it was like these guys have brought this sport back where it's mainstream, where when it goes beyond just the wrestling program, and these guys are talked about like on the news programs and different
Oh
things.
yeah.
It's transcended. That's why I say like the mid 80s and the mid 90s to me were hotbeds of wrestling. After that, like I said, after Nitro ended and then the WWE, it's like that stuff. Everything just started. The wheels start falling off for me. That's why I'm like, okay, I'm done with this.
I can understand that, but I was just thinking, like, if I could just go in my time machine, just go back to 1985 and just, like you said, you get up at 8:00 and wrestling's on, and you were like glued to the TV.
Yeah, most kids watching cartoons. I'm watching wrestling.
Right. And now, Reggie, you could get up in the morning and you could turn all that stuff on, like it's on YouTube. And WWE Network has a lot of that stuff, but I think it's just back then we were seeking it out. You were glued because that's all you got. Now you can get it at any time. Too much. Yeah.
And it's different. I'd say if you go back and you tell me you still watch a lot of stuff and you take notes on it. And everybody's be sending me all these recaps of all these wrestling shows. And I was like, I can't watch it now. It's different because back then I told you I was really into it. And I'm like, okay, who's gonna win? I wanted my favorite guy to win. And so it was just a little different. You know what I'm saying? I can't watch. They was like, do you sit down and watch it for hours? I'm like, no, I don't. I just can't do it anymore.
No, I can't do it either. I will say the one thing that hits me in my feels is that when they've redone this Saturday night's main event, when the intro hits, it's like Saturday Night Live will not be seen, so we can show you the presentation.
Right.
And it plays the old school instrumental, and about halfway, I don't know if you've seen it.
But that sounds great though. That sounds great.
But I can tell you, Reggie, about halfway through the instrumental, it stops and it looks like an old VCR on TV, and it hits rewind, and they start playing Obsession like they did when it first. Now that does get me because that gets me back when it was
right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that out because I didn't know it came on like that, because every time the Saturday night main event, just like I tuned in to watch Goldberg's last match, and I think I tuned in. I don't know. It was a couple more. It was Saturday night main event. I think Cody Rhodes was coming out, and I'm a belt guy, right? Cody Rhodes was coming out, and he had the Wing Eagle one time on Saturday night's main event, I think. So I was like, okay, I got to see that. But there's only certain times I know things about. That's when I'll tune into it.
Yeah, I tell you though, they've got it on TikTok. I know you're on TikTok. Just type in like Saturday night's main event opening, like 2024 or 2025, and it'll show you the opening.
Yeah,
I watch that once or twice a week because it'll just get you fired up and ready for the remind you of the old days. Yeah,
right.
So how did you become? Because I see your collection there in the back, and I'm just very envious. And all that. How'd you become a belt guy and all that? And what are your favorite belts?
Well, I've always loved wrestling belts since watching as a kid. Just infatuated with the belts, and I'll send you a picture. I'll send you a picture afterwards. I used to actually make belts out of like aluminum foil, old leather couch that they were throwing away. Anything you could, I would make belts as a kid, right? But it was, I think the year I went to my first NWA Legends Fan Fest was in 2013, and Dave Milliken was there. He's the ace of belts that makes all the belts for the wrestlers back then, and he's the protege of Reggie Harp, who was the king of belts, right?
Right.
So he would have all these belts on a table, and he would have some replicas, and he would have some of the original belts, right? And I'm like, whoa! I'm up there holding all the belts. I'm taking pictures of them, and I'm like, man. And then I was like, okay, I gotta buy me my first belt. So the belts back then, a Dave Milliken belt back 10 years ago, and I'm gonna throw out prices, was like maybe like $1,800, $2,000, right? This is going back to 2013 to 2014, right?
Right.
So going to all the conventions. So fast forward 2016, I bought my first belt from because I emailed Dave Milliken, and Dave had got behind on a lot of orders, right? And he's just like, I'm be honest, I'm doing at the time it was like Lip Sync Battle, and he was doing all these shows where he was making a lot of belts, right? And he's like, I'm so behind. He was like, by knowing this, if you still want to place an order, I require a deposit, but some people, it's been 7 to 8 years and they're still waiting on belts, right? Or even not longer. But I was like, okay, let me rethink this. And then when Dave goes to the event, he have a couple of handlers that help him carry everything, right? So one of the guys told me, he's like, he has a belt he's trying to sell. So I contacted him, and he's like, yeah, I'm trying to sell it. And he's like, okay, I'll sell it. And I'll tell you, and I bought my first belt for like $1,800. Dave Milliken. It was a secondhand belt he made for the guy, right? So I drove to Memphis, Tennessee, and it was like on a Friday. My kids were out of school. They were small at the time, and my wife didn't have to work. And I was like, what are y'all doing? And they's like, nothing. I was like, y'all want to go to Memphis with me? And so everybody jumped in the car. We drove down on like a Friday night or Saturday morning. I think it might have been a Friday morning. We drove, we met the guy, and then when we was there, we was like, okay, I got the belt, so what are we gonna do now? So we was in Memphis, so I was like, we did like the Martin Luther King Museum, and just I went to Graceland, so I like made a trip out of it. And then I was like, and I got back to the room and I had the belt, my first belt. So it's like a kid for Christmas. I'm looking at it. Look, I'm putting it on. I'm doing everything. And I'm like, I can't wait to get back here and show somebody. But when I got back, none of my friends that I hang out on, they don't like wrestling, and they could care less about a wrestling belt. Right. So I didn't have anybody. So at the time, I started joining these Facebook groups, and wrestling belts was early on. And I started posting my belt in the group and getting a lot of hits and everything. And then all of a sudden, I was like, So I want to get another one. There's the company called Top Row Belts. I got me a big gold belt. And I was like, I want to get another one. And what my point is, it became addictive, right? Mm-hmm. It became addictive. So after a while, I was like, okay. And then that's when I started buying my belts from overseas in Pakistan, because it was like the quality wasn't as good, but still I started using good makers, like the best makers over there, and I was getting them a whole lot cheaper. And then next thing you know, I had like 8 belts, and my belts initially was the NWA World Television title on red leather, the big gold belt. I had I don't know if when I say the 10 pounds of gold, right, it was the NWA World Heavyweight title. And then I got like, I think it was the World Television title, and I got one other belt, but it was basically belts from the Jim Crockett area, Mid-Atlantic. And I had my little case set up, and I was posting. I was like, okay, guys, I got 8 belts and 9 belts. I have finished my collection. And next thing I know, I'm collecting belts from Championship Wrestling in Florida, WWF, and next thing you know, if you look around, if you come in this room right there, it's probably like 100 some odd belts in this room right now.
Wow.
And like I said, when I started, I just couldn't stop, and I'm to the point now where it's not as bad as it used to be, because I was just buying belts just to have them. Now, if I get a belt, it's because, okay, I'm going to this convention. I need to do a photo op with this person. Right. Because, every belt that I normally, if you see me take a picture with a person, it's normally the belt that they had. And now it's to the point where if they don't have a belt, I got my 605 belt, and we're taking a picture with my 605 belt. So, right. So that's how I started with belts, and that's how it came. And like I said, started out with one. And do I have a favorite belt? I really don't. The NWA television title Reds is kind of my favorite because it was my first. But I was just a belt guy. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people, they call me Mr. 605, but before that, they still call me the belt guy because of my collection.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. With that, because I know I had seen some of I think the first picture I saw of you was with your 605 belt, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Right. But it's weird that you reached out to me, like I said, on this TikTok thing is totally. I don't get a whole lot of followers. I don't get a whole lot of likes. This TikTok thing, I'm just not. I don't understand the algorithm, and I don't know what. I don't know what I'm doing, and I know TikTok is more for creative content because even I like your little segment in the morning. Even when you
Right.
say I got my coffee.
Right.
But when you say that, for whatever reason, that brings a little chuckle to my face. And I
Right.
love it. I'm like, I got my coffee. I want to say it before you say it. That's what gets me. And I think that's what TikTok's about. I think they want more creative content, not just somebody posting pictures or something. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, but I get it. I get it. And somebody said, actually, I saw a video yesterday. They said that little 10-second or that little 3-second video, all of that is content. Like
Right,
if you show a little 10-second video of your belts, that's content. And they like just throw it up because it's all content. Yeah, I tell you, I go out and I post that on everywhere, my morning coffee video, and I usually tell a joke and all of that.
So where do you get your jokes from?
I just get them online. There's a Facebook group of dad jokes. I get a lot of them from there. I'll just take a picture of it because I'm trying to remember because I don't want to say the same one like over and over again. Yeah.
But you're not reading. You got it memorized because you're saying it like I got 1 million of them. Let me tell you another joke. Like where's he getting them from?
Right. I look at it right before I start recording. I'm doing my coffee and I'm listening to usually wrestling podcasts or a devotion podcast or something as I'm making my coffee. I'm like, all right, I got to get ready for it. And all of that. And I'll go out and I post it everywhere, but I go back home and I'll be out with my parents and my wife for dinner. And some woman will come up to me. It's like, you don't know me, but I see your videos every morning and stuff like that.
Right.
And it's like you at conventions when you said people come up to you and stuff.
Cool. That's cool. That is so cool.
Right.
That's all right. Wow.
Right. But I know, Reggie, I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but I wanted to ask you, as my wife says, man does not live by wrestling alone. What other interests and hobbies do you have?
Well, actually, not too much these days. When I was younger, and I played a lot of basketball. I would be in the gym like 4 or 5 times a week. But as I'm getting older, my knees are bad, my hips are bad, and I used to be like a big TV guy, big movie guy because somebody would say a show from the early 80s, and I'll be like, oh yeah, Facts of Life. It debuted back in 1979. It ran for X amount of seasons. Blah. I used to be that guy. As I'm getting older, I can't remember stuff like I did before, but I used to be a television guy, a movie guy. But as I'm getting older, like I said, I don't watch as much as that stuff anymore. And like you said, what do I do? And you said, besides that, I'll be waiting for the next convention. That's I'll be living for the next convention, and that's what I do. That's what I do.
All right. So, this will come out after that, but you're in Iowa this weekend. What's the next one after Iowa?
It's a convention in Charlotte. It actually starts on the 29th of July and runs to I think to August the 2nd or 3rd, whatever that Sunday is, right?
The 3rd.
It's called The Gathering. It's T-Mark Promotions presents The Gathering. And if you go to the website, oh my goodness, he has a card that's unreal. Like, and he's got vendors that's bringing in what I'm stoked. And I don't know if you remember this, and you're probably a kid. I think they might have called it the Battle of the. Not when Ric Flair went over to Japan and he lost the big gold belt. Do you remember who he wrestled?
Was that Fujinami?
So Tatsuji Fujinami will be at the Gathering, right?
Wow.
So what I did, I went out and I'm taking my big gold belt with me, but I'm also I made a replica. He was the IWGP champion at the time, and I got a belt, that same belt that the Great Muta had also. But yeah, it's almost like it's stuff like that I live for. We talk about my belts, right? That's the only time I get belts made is like if it's for a reason. And like I said, I was like, they said Tatsuji Fujinami. I was like, whoa. I was like, and I still think about, I don't know if you remember the press conference when Fuji has the big gold belt. Ric Flair busts into the press conference.
Yes.
And takes the belts back. What we didn't realize, that they're setting it up for them for the rematch. Back then. But that's the stuff I live for. Is that, and that's like I said, if you go to T-Mark Promotions and look at the card, he has so many wrestlers that's gonna be there from that I think that Wednesday and Thursday up until that Sunday. And like I said, it's I call it a fan fest by day, and at night all the fans ourselves, we hang out together, and like some of the wrestlers hang out in the lobby.
Right.
And then another one I'm going to, it's going to be in October. It used to be Championship Wrestling for Florida convention, but they changed it to GrappleCon now. But Barry Rose, this guy, he puts on a great event down in Tampa. He's down in Tampa. And like I said, it reminds me of a gathering. It's just on a smaller scale, and it's great. And like I said, that's when if you go to that event, that's when, remember I was telling you how if you're in line, it's not a time to mingle with the talent. Well, that event you can, because the line is only like 8 people or 10 people at that particular line. So you have time to mingle. It's a more intimate surrounding, which is great, and that's around October. And then Thanksgiving weekend, WrestleCade, we'll end out the year in WrestleCade. Hopefully I'll see you there. I don't know if the missus will let you come.
I'm gonna make plans. I'm like, look, let's do your birthday either the night before or like I told you, I'm like 2 hours away. I may go down early. I might leave early, go down there because I've got my list because I don't have thousands to spend on that. I'm like, I need to get this and get that, but I will definitely. I'm going to make plans. I'm going to be there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to be there. So I'll seek you out.
Okay. You do that. Cause like I said, I love it when, when you actually can meet people that you never really met, but then, whether it's through Facebook groups or something like this. And then when you actually meet them, it's almost like, hey, how you doing? It's almost like we like brothers, like we actually know each other.
Right.
Know?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. We'll have to get together, take a picture and all of that. I'm actually looking forward to that. But Reggie, I want to be very mindful of your time. Thank you so much. I've got to have you back and tell me how Iowa was and all of these conventions that you go to. But before I let you go ahead and plug any and everything you have, my friend.
Okay. Right now, you can find me on Twitter, Mr. 605 Reggie Harp, and same thing on TikTok. And on Facebook, search me out. I'm just under Reggie Harp. And like I said, just you can like me, follow me on Facebook. And I don't know if if you're on Facebook or not. But, Facebook is doing this monetizing thing. So the more followers I get, the more I'm trying to build up my brand. And
hey, that's awesome.
The more they're trying, I'm trying to get. If Facebook is giving it out, I'm trying to get a little blip like everybody else. You know what I'm saying? But on Facebook, it's just under Reggie Harp. It's like I said, send me a friend request, follow me, like, share, comment. It's about engagement. That's what it's about right now.
Absolutely. You're going to get a friend request from me, my friend.
I appreciate that.
I make it easy for people. If it's a social media, I should say, and I'm on it, I made it at the Joey Harris on all of them, just so people can find me. So, and if you like the show, please leave a review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or your preferred podcast app. I would really appreciate it. We can also be found on Spotify and YouTube. Just search for the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Reggie, again, thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it. And as for the rest of you, thank you all for joining me. This is Joey saying so long from the heart of Virginia.
The Cup of Joe Wrestling Show is a production of Baby Kangaroo Media.